I'm at the preachers though. My knees getting weak. My gun might blow, but we gonna be all right. That's a verse. That's a bar. That's all I got in me right now.
Okay, so tell me, why did you choose to come here?
Coming here was an afterthought. I wanted to go to Navy, and I got rejected from Navy. So, I was ready to go ROTC, HBCU, Morehouse, Spelman right across the street. Would have been wonderful. And then next thing I know, I get a letter saying, "Hey, West Point." I'm like, "Oh shit." So yeah, that's how I ended up at West Point. Some opportunities are too good you can't turn down,
And since being here, how has this place changed you?
I don't know if it's necessarily changed me too much. I've always had a strong sense of right or wrong coming into it, and I think you kind of have to. Most people do coming here. I think it's kind of amplified it a little more, but I try not to let this place change who I am, simply because, like, I don't know, with everything there's good, there's some bad, and my kind of rule of thumb here is, like, I'm gonna do me within the confines of West Point, but I'm not gonna let West Point change the way I do things.
Explain how can West Point change you? Like, what does that mean?
There's a culture here of a lot of things, whether it's drinking, binging in excess, looking out for yourself, and kind of just being weird and afraid to talk to people. There's a lot of that here, and that's just not who I am. Every weekend it's like, oh man, I gotta go drink because I don't know when I'll drink again because of privileges. That's not really me. You have a lot of people here who get so caught up in academics that they forget why we're here, I think. And the reality of it is, like, we're not here to make an A in a math class. We're not here to see how fast of a 2-mile you can run. And don't get me wrong, while those things are great, I think the purpose of this place is more so to challenge yourself mentally and challenge your beliefs to become overall a better leader and establish connections and relationships. Because the reality of it is, everybody has to take off this uniform one day, and the only thing you'll have to fall back on are the relationships you made. So I think a lot of people forget about that and forget their why and just become cynical and weird and autonomous people.
So when things get really tough here, well, I guess, what is the hardest thing that you've had to go through here? Before we go to the other question of that.
I'd say every year at West Point has been extremely hard for me. And it's weird. Every year involving West Point, something bad has happened. So when I first got accepted to the prep school, right after I graduated, that was when I found out my dad had cancer. So that was back in 2018. And that was really hard because my dad was my hero. And seeing this man who was my best friend and who was literally the thing I wanted to be and surpass when I grew up, to see him reduced to someone who couldn't even walk himself to his car, who when I came home I found him in the ball crying because he was in so much pain. That was pretty rough. But also during that time he reaffirmed why he was my hero as well. Because one thing he always told me is, as long as there's a chance, we're gonna fight. And he beat cancer. And I think that's probably what made the next year at West Point that much harder, because the following year he ended up passing away. It wasn't even cancer related. I watch him lose everything he believed to make him a man, whether it was the ability to work, to drive himself, to take care of, my mom, me, my brother. I watch him lose that and then gain it back. And not only did he gain it back, he began to enjoy life again. He didn't let cancer define who he was. He enjoyed life, was an amazing father, an amazing husband, an amazing friend. And he passed away. So the suddenness of that really hurt me. And even to this day, it's still really hard. Just because I keep finding myself asking why. But, I realized that even if I knew why, it wouldn't make me feel better. It just wouldn't. And it seemed like a lot of things have been falling apart since my father passed away. Whether it was my relationship with my mom or two sides of the family. It just seems like that my dad was the glue holding things together, and people get funny when death is involved, And then, not even a full year later, with everything with COVID, I lost 2 cousins to COVID. My mom was on a respirator for 2 months. She didn't know if she was going to make it, so I don't know. It's kind of hard for me to pick one year or one event that's specifically the worst when they've all been pretty shitty. Can I cuss? I'm sorry.
Oh, yes, you're fine.
When they've all been pretty bad, but I'm coping with it the best way I know how. I'm not drinking or doing anything crazy like that. I go to therapy. I talk to amazing people like you. Talk to my friends, My mom told me something that I still live by, and I have it printed out, I have printed out and framed on my desk, so I see it every morning. It's like, I don't know when I'll be okay, but I know if I do the right things to take care of myself, eventually I will be. So people ask me, are you okay? Nah, not yet, but I know eventually I will be. So yeah, it's been a pretty rough 3 years.
No, it's like, I can't even imagine going through that, especially here. And it's like, how do you, knowing the demands of West Point, how do you keep going? I mean, how do you wake up every morning and, go to class, and how West Point is. How?
Well, when my dad passed away, so March of my plebe year, it was right before plebe parent weekend, and last conversation we had, I still remember, my brother had just got suspended from school. It was his senior year, and they was like, they're just gonna bring him up with me they were just gonna bring him up with them for plebe parent weekend. This was Tuesday of that week, March 3rd. And, one of the last things he told me was, I'm proud of you and I love you. I can't wait to see everything you become. I can't wait to see you commission from West Point. And, that was like my last conversation with my dad. But even knowing that he wanted me to do it, it was hard. Especially being in the pandemic environment right after that, it was like, I literally had to email my teachers and tell them I do not feel like getting out of bed. I am hurting and I am angry at the world, and I do not know why. I lost my dad, and now I have to step up and help around the house, and I am struggling. And I had to let my teachers know that, because, you asked me how'd I get out of bed. I mean, shit, for a while I didn't. But, like I said, I did the right things to start taking care of myself. I gave myself space to grieve. And slowly but surely I started putting things back together. And when it comes to now, I kind of just, one thing my dad enjoyed was seeing me and my siblings chase down our goals and knock them down. That's what he got enjoyment out of. And, I didn't want to not live my life and chase my dreams just because of a tragedy that happened to him that affected me, because I know, like, if he was here, he'd tell me, give your space time to cry, deal with your emotions, but also, live your life. So all I'm doing is just living my life, trying to make it one day at a time.
And what do you hope your legacy to be as not only a West Pointer, but just a human being?
Honestly, while the West Point thing is cool, and don't get me wrong, it's pretty cool, right? I could really care less. My whole thing is, when I die, will people say Chris was a good guy and he lived a good life? Like, I hate to go back to my dad, but I don't, because like so many people have to look outside of their household for what an amazing man should be, and I had one with me 24/7 every step of the way. When this man died, he had letters from all over the country from people he had worked with, thanking him for his service, saying how great he was. When he passed away, he had about 600 people at his funeral. The church was overflowing. They had a travel bus from Americus with like 200 people come up 2.5 hours away. They took like a charter bus to come up and be at the funeral. And seeing all those people together to mourn his life, the loss of his life, but also to celebrate his life at the same time, it was a wonder to see, and that's kind of the life I want to live. I just want to be somebody who, when people look at me, they can say he was a good guy, he cared for people, and he didn't waste his life. So
that's beautiful, and I think you will be that person.
I try.